Welcome to Heart Speak Podcast, episode 83, Claiming Our Power. So how are you getting on with your visual imagery of your beautiful, shooting, blooming flower? I've been watching my own. It's interesting, it went from a 8-pointed star to a 16-pointed star, something that's fascinated me for a long time. I didn't make that happen, it just appeared. And I've been following or seeing 16-pointed stars within the Earth, within Mother Earth, and recognizing that this is a part of creativity. 8 is the number of heaven on earth. So I'm following the 16 and moving with it and seeing what happens. It feels that it's a multidimensional symbol for me. What also became clear was that my stem had become stronger, and also that I noticed other little shoots around me, somewhat midwifing my own development. I'll be interested to hear how you're getting on with your shoots. Thank you, many of you who posted them onto the Facebook, the Great Mother Calling. But it's really just a way of recognizing what nurtures you, what doesn't. How different circumstances in your day have changed your increasingly shooting flower. And maybe sometimes you've even found that the petals of the old way have fallen away and you have new ways. Or maybe you're finding that you're very aware of what works for you, what doesn't. Interesting, the last couple of days, I've been more aware of a couple of challenges where I've really had to step forward, not be my friendly self, my pleasing self, and had to say, no, this is not okay, do something now. And that feels to be part of that strengthening of that stem, to be very clear about what I need, what I don't need. And this is certainly, it's like protecting this flower and being very, as I say, very nurturing of it, but in being clear in my communication. I wonder what else has happened for you. So here we are at the first quarter of the moon. Again, I've been enjoying looking at our moon. I'm going, aha, there's the crescent moon. And I've been looking at all of you as we all look towards that same moon. So what is the first quarter moon? We've been through this once already, but it is this developing stem, developing our strength. And it's going from being a child to being the hero. So it's the child, the boy child growing up to be taking his first steps, well, not maybe even his first steps, but leaving home, meeting challenges. And we could say this is the teenage years or even the early 20s, where we leave home, we take risks, we meet dramas, we are meeting people who are our peers. And maybe you can think back to those times if you are a little older than that and think, yes, what did I go through in those years? They were years of discovery. They were years of setting out into the world. And yes, we might look back at them now and go, wow, look what you explored. Maybe you explored things that were around during those years that you might look back and go, why did I do that? But they are years of strengthening. I think it's only now in retrospect I look back and I'd say, oh, I wish I had been the wise Christine now to be able to talk to that younger Christine. But that younger Christine didn't have fear. It was almost like, this is what we do. This is how we move in the world. Lots of things happened to me in my late teens, early 20s, but it wasn't, how can I say, I didn't want to be protected from them. I met them head on and they took me down and they took me up and things happen. And I think sometimes we forget that that's the normal development of the hero or the heroine, whatever you want to call it, but the hero energy in us. It's like, I'm ready. And I feel that it's really important that our youngsters have that same experience. We don't, what we might say, coddle them. We don't protect them. Life is like that. There are expectations, there are drives, and we pick ourselves up and we move on again. It's no different from the child who's learning to walk. They bounce down onto their bottom a few times and up they get again. And we don't say, oh, please don't do that again, you're going to have a problem. We go through it. And I don't know if I would have told my younger Christine, like, well, don't do it. Just don't try anymore. Don't go into a relationship anymore. I had my eyes wide open, and I wanted to challenge myself, meet myself in so many different ways. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. It's the development or the claiming of your power. And the story goes along with Gemini. And those of you who have looked at my books, especially The Heart of the Great Mother or the 2012 book, I talk about this sign, the astrological sign of Gemini. And if you followed, there are 12 signs, and each one of those signs, I talk about a different phase of our own development. And for today, for the first quarter, I really feel this third sign of Gemini taps in beautifully to what I want to talk about. And of course, we're still in a Gemini sun. So although the moon has moved on, the Gemini sun is just growing. And it is about Gemini. Now, what is the symbol of Gemini? If you've seen it, it is two poles with a beam across the top of them, and we imagine a beam across the bottom. And who are Gemini now? What is Gemini? Where does this symbol come from? It comes from some twins called Castor and Pollux, which you can see in the sky at this time. If you have one of those lovely night sky apps on your phone, I like going out and finding all these constellations. And it's a group of stars, which is a constellation. And Castor and Pollux were twins. And they loved each other very much, but they were told that they had to either live in spirit or on the earth. And because of their love, they said, we don't want to live in either together in either spirit or either on this earth. We don't want to be separated. So we are going to constantly move between spirit and earth, between heaven and earth, spirit and matter, and we'll meet in the middle and then we'll separate again. So that one of the symbols of Gemini is this constantly restless energy. I, as a Gemini, as you know, get very bored very easily. So we're constantly moving. But because it's between heaven and earth, it also, the energy of Gemini is about the communicator, the spirit messenger. And so as Gemini, we are described often as butterflies or bees that move energy from spirit to earth. We inspire individuals. I hope I'm inspiring you. But that inspire is to move energy, to be a communicator, to bring messages from heaven to earth, but also earth to heaven. It's not just one way. And so Geminis are the talkers, the writers, the teachers who are constantly inspiring or germinating individuals. I hope I'm germinating you, bringing information that doesn't mean you have to follow my information, but that you can be inspired within yourself because of that connection. So it's all about connection. And as I've talked about previously, I'm very much in touch with my dots that I've talked about, that I am a dot, you're a dot. And when we two connect, we're creating a third energy, which it isn't you, it isn't me, it's both of us. And one of the symbols, and I'm wearing my earrings of this, is called the Vesica Pisces. It's where the circumference of one circle goes through the center of another. And they create this wonderful shape, oval shape between them. That's the collective consciousness. That's unity consciousness. So when two and more are gathered together, we create this amazing shape, which is a doorway, a portal into collective unity consciousness. There we are, a lot of information in one little bit there. But what I'm saying is, I'm becoming more and more convinced that relationship is everything on this planet. It isn't just about, how can I put it, an intimate relationship, but it is about how, whether I connect to a tree, whether I connect to hummingbirds, whether I connect to an individual, whether I connect to an experience, it is the combination or the synthesis between me and something else creating a third entity. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we take it in this other way. Why am I talking about Gemini and Castrum Pollux? There was, way back in Egypt, a time where Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt both had a king, and they decided to get together. And one of the kings, or one of the poles of this, was called Boaz, and one is Yakin. And when these two, both were represented, you could say, by a pillar. Some of you may have seen similar pillars as such, obelisks that we call them. And a pillar was a status symbol. So when the Upper and Lower Egypt got together, they brought their two status symbols together. And one, as I could say, was called Boaz, one was Yakin. And what they said, well, okay, how do we govern together? And the idea was, okay, how we gather together or govern together is Boaz will represent physical power and Yakin will represent spiritual power. And we could look at it from the way of Boaz represented the king, the king and physical power, physical rulership. And you could say that Yakin represented spiritual leadership, or the priest. And so here we had two different types of leadership. One was who looked after the spiritual well-being, and one looked after the physical, state and religion. And that's very relevant in the UK, in the US. And these two were two different pillars. But what was most important, and this now comes to my Vesica Pisces, or the concept of Trinity, or the Castrum Pollux, each in the center. So let's put these pillars up in the sky, and across them was a beam, a pole, a horizontal beam. And that was called Mart, M-A-T. And Mart was female. She was a goddess, and she was a goddess of justice, reasonableness, fairness. And she actually gave the power to the king and the priest. All right, so in the beginning, there was the feminine, the nothingness, the ocean of possibilities, the great mother, who gave birth to her sons, one of whom became king, one of whom became priest. That makes sense? So here's the Trinity. In the beginning is again, it doesn't have to be feminine, but in the beginning was nothing. In the beginning was the energy, the source of everything. And you've heard me speak about this being the source of energy within Mother Earth. Call it the Great Mother, call it anything, but it is out of the oneness comes the duality. And together they create the Trinity. There, that's pretty deep. So the king and the priest, well, let's just stay with those names, knew that their source of creation, their source of inspiration, their source of leadership came from Mart, from the center energy. The energy that ran between them was the source of their energy. And they were only as powerful as that which they fed back to the source. In other words, they were powerful because of the source, and they were only as powerful because they kept feeding back into that source. That makes sense? So it was a perfect Trinity. You might want to see it like a figure of 8. But sometimes when we see a figure of 8, we go, figure of 8, 2 circles joined together with a center point. And we forget that that center point is everything. Without that center point, those 2 others don't exist. You can look at it like a yin and yang sign, some of you know. You say, oh, here's yin, here's yang. No, but you forget the line that joins them. That's the Trinity. That's the third point. Making sense? We got so caught up in duality. It's like, oh, it's either this or this. No, this or this is only as powerful as them feeding the centerpiece. or them constantly passing through the center, you could even say, giving up power back to the center and then being reborn out again. I hope I'm giving you enough metaphors for you to look at. But what happened was everybody was happy. This was a really nice balance, this Trinity. And you may even see there are sacred buildings that show that Trinity. Often there's a big door or a big window and then two smaller windows. This was showing that the people who built these churches or buildings or temples understood the power of the Trinity much more than the power of the duality. And I'm not talking, I must say, about the Trinity as Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, because it was that, but it lost its way when we stopped understanding what the Holy Ghost was, that this is the intermediary, the source of energy, the feminine energy. Now, what then happened later on is that instead of having the common beam being this fluid source of energy, it became a solid beam. And when it became a solid beam, that solid beam became what we know as God or Yahweh. In other words, the power of the priest and the king was given down from a one energy that never changed. So once the horizontal pole never changed, it meant we've created what we call a hierarchical system. And that hierarchical system could never be reached in any other way but by living the laws of that hierarchy. And that has continued down through the Templars. It then followed on into the Freemasons, and it's part of the Masonic tradition. If you ever want to see this, their doorway is made up of two pillars called Joachim and Boaz. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Is that we need to return to the fluidity, that we need to remember that yes, we may have a powerful masculine and feminine, but what makes us really powerful is when both of those acknowledge that their strength comes from our core, our beingness, our integrity, and they keep feeding back to it. And what I'm saying there is, whatever you call your core, whether you call it your heart center, whether you call it the core of your body, that is constantly fed by your experiences, constantly fed by your hero's experiences. So if I may just use the metaphor of she will give your inner hero strength to go into life, but whatever he or she experiences out in the life through the different activities, that is what strengthens the core. And as we've been talking about our little plants, the core is the stem. But the stem is also connected to the above and the below. So again, it feeds the nurturing that comes from Mother Earth and the nurturing that comes from Father Sky. Don't want you to get too lost there. But what we're going to do, this is where I'm coming to, we're going to do a meditation to meet your physical strength and your spiritual strength and see how comfortable you are with both of them. And when I'm talking about spiritual strength, I'm not talking about religion necessarily. I'm talking about the ability to connect to the spirit and also to be able to be strongly on this earth. One no better than other, please. They are part of almost what, one of them is energy more, one of them is more in matter, but I don't want you to get lost in that. So are you ready to do a meditation? Because what we're going to do is to meet your spiritual strength and your physical strength as animals. I like animals. And then what I'm going to say is that your animal can be four-legged, two-legged, creepy crawly, flying. In other words, not necessarily just a four-legged animal. So let's go and meet these strengths. Once again, hope you're in a place where you can close your eyes. If not, please do this meditation later. And I don't mind if you have your feet on the ground or not. Please take a short breath in, long breath out. And as you're doing that, you're clearing your mind. clearing a mind of what you know, what you think you know, anything that I've been speaking about. And as you do, please come into the core of your being. This can be your vertical line going through all the chakras. It can be the heart, your heart. But I want this to be, as the chakras are, moving energy. And they're not just moving front and back, they're moving side to side. It's like a fluid source that runs up and down, side to side. And it's connected through the earth energy and the heaven energy, sky and heaven and earth. And as you do that, there's almost a sense of nothingness. There's hopefully no thought. You're just listening to me. Just energy flowing. It's just pure energy without any definition. And what I'd like you to now feel is that you are now in a place of nature. A place where you can stand upon the earth or sit on the earth or sit on a stone, whatever. But be very mindful of you being in this place. Listen to the sounds. Smell the air. Look at the colors, the vibrancy of the colors. And maybe feel the wind or the sun on your face or on your body. Now, I want you to imagine that on the left side of your body is your physical strength. It's an animal that represents your physical strength. Let the first animal that you see be the right one. It can even be a mythological animal. What animal has appeared to you now as your physical strength? What are 3 adjectives to describe that animal? Strong, soft, quick. What are the 3 adjectives? And just for a moment, imagine stepping into that animal. How familiar are you with these qualities inside yourself? Feel the strength of this animal as you step in. Now step out. Just return for a moment back to that beautiful place in nature that you are. Now coming towards you on your right side is your spiritual, strong animal, your spiritual power. What animal appears to bring with it spiritual power? See that now. What 3 adjectives would you use to describe this animal? And just for a moment, step into this animal. How does that feel? Do you know this spiritual power? How comfortable are you with it? Now step back out of that animal. Just for a moment, imagine that you can touch each of the animals. Even if you can't immediately touch, you can feel their energy. Under the left hand, you have your physical power animal, and under the right hand, you have your spiritual power animal. How does that feel? Does the energy come into you? Are they in balance? Maybe even there's a third animal that appears. 1 and 1 equals 3. And now, taking your hands away, just slowly see those images disperse, knowing you can always call on those energies. And gently bring your awareness back to the room where you are. And when you're ready to open your eyes, and please, as always, make a note of your findings and be aware of which of the animals may have been easier for you to connect to, or maybe there's an animal that you saw or felt that you feel you need to explore a little bit more. Write down your 3 qualities for each of the animals. So you're really asking yourself, am I aware of these qualities? How do they appear in my life? And imagine that these are gifts that your inner hero carries as you go out into the world. So again, the hero is not, there may be fears, but actually the hero is courageous, especially when it has these animals with it. So as you meet different events over the next few days, see which of the animals pulls forward. Both of them are important. It's like that perfect balance between heaven and earth. And until we meet again, enjoy these animals, enjoy your power, and continue to work to use them to help the development of your beautiful plant and see what happens. So until next time, take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the HeartSpeak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Please check out all HeartSpeak episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. HeartSpeak is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and now playing on iHeartRadio. You can also watch the archive podcasts on YouTube. Connect with Christine on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, including her newest Facebook group, The Great Mother Calling. Do share with family, friends, colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of HeartSpeak.